Just about a few minutes to the top of the hour. We want to say thank you so much for making time and joining us right here on Africa 411, your favorite Pan-African talk show that actually comes live every Thursday from 9 p.m. Now listen to this. As of October 2019, the global participation rate of women in national level parliaments was 24.5, and of course women accounted for only about 8% of all national leaders and a mere 2% of all presidential posts. Now today in Africa, a continent where women make more than half of the total population, there's actually one female president who's actually the president of Ethiopia, and that is Her Excellency Sahle Work Zewde. And tonight on this particular program, we'll be having a conclusive conversation and debate on why we have very few women in political leadership positions. Before then, let's take a look at the top stories tonight. Welcome to this broadcast. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe, our sign language interpreter. Tonight is the amazing Anne Wairimo. Remember, you can be part of this program by tweeting us at TV47KE, or you can tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe. Always remember to add the hashtag Africa411. Let's kick off this broadcast tonight with the latest on the COVID-19 pandemic right here in Kenya, where the government is expected to roll out home community-based healthcare protocols that will pave way for home quarantines in a bid to decongest current isolation centers in the country. Speaking at Afya House, Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe said that the country's largest isolation facilities in Mbagathi Hospital and the Kenyatta University Hospital are on the verge of overcrowding. Kagwe also cautioned truck drivers who continue to flout containment and movement restrictions issued by the Ministry of Health.
The country could soon take a different path in its approach towards offering healthcare to those who test positive for COVID-19, a move that is expected to ease overcrowding within isolation centers. According to Health CS Mutahi Kagwe, it is time for the government to implement its own systems with home-based healthcare protocols touted as a remedy to the problem witnessed at Mbagathi and Kenyatta University hospitals. The two continue to risk having their resources overstretched by hundreds of COVID-19 patients who have been streaming into the facilities for treatment.
We have learned over the last 3 months or so, we have been in school learning how to manage this disease, understanding this disease, going with the protocols that we are learning from other people.
However, home quarantines will have to be structured in strict adherence to the World Health Organization's home care protocols, including availability of relevant facilities.
We have realized that over 80% of our patients in hospitals are asymptomatic, and therefore baby can and may be managed from home.
Meanwhile, Kagwe has also cautioned cross-border truck drivers who are seemingly colluding with security officials to go past police roadblocks.
Na mimi nashangaa sana kwa sababu najiuliza, kutoka Mombasa jameni, na mimi nikitembea mimi mwenyewe nasimamishwa ma roadblock mengi. Huyu mtu ni kusema amepitia njia ingine ambayo haina roadblock.
According to the CS, the traffic snarl-up at the border points is self-inflicted since a section of truckers continue to disobey the directives issued by the Ministry of Health.
We have, however, noted that a majority of the truck drivers are commencing their journey to the borders without this valid document, expecting to be tested at the border points.
This as Kagwe announced that the purge within Afya House will continue, with more heads expected to roll. Globally, COVID-19 cases stand at 6,600,196, with 3,190,974 patients already recovered and discharged from healthcare facilities. However, some 388,447 people died of the virus. David Mudhoka, TV47.
Right, later on in the program, we'll be joined by Joachim Osur, who's a technical director at AMREF. I know you have so many questions, and we'll be trying to get a sense of that announcement by the Ministry of Health. However, for now, let's move on. And the Attorney General, Paul Kihara Kariuki, has defended the revised executive order signed by President Uhuru Kenyatta last evening. The AG says the president was within the law in reorganizing his government's structure. He was responding to a protest letter that was issued by the Chief Justice David Maraga, who faulted the order, claiming it will have no effect on the judiciary and the Judicial Service Commission. The president has also been defended by Senator Ochilo Ayako and Kotu boss Francis Atwoli.
Given the mandate to serve people, and the person given that mandate can reorganize the structure of government and say that I want services to be delivered this way. Certain people, both in public service, bureaucratic public service, and political public service like us, have tried to align themselves to certain factions. It is an open secret that there are factions supporting the president and factions that are supporting the deputy president, and that is not healthy for the nation.
Katika leadership yoyote ni lazima tuwe na order, lazima tuwe na mpangilio. Hatuwezi kuwa na viongozi wawili katika nchi moja na tutarajie kupata matokeo.
Still remaining here in Kenya, Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya and Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa have yet again been endorsed as Luhya's spokesmen. The two were endorsed by Bukusu Council of Elders and a section of church leaders who held a meeting in Bungoma. And as Joash Onsare now reports, Moses Wetangula's ouster is far from over after the registrar of political parties challenged the new list of new Ford Kenya leaders.
Kenya! Simba, Simba, Simba. Usawa, haki na ukweli.
According to the registrar of political parties and Nderitu, the faction supporting Wetangula's ouster failed to provide requisite signatures to oust him. Wetangula was ousted by a section of his party members and replaced him with Kanduyi lawmaker Wafula Wamunyinyi as the party leader. Wetangula's faction now welcoming the decision of the registrar.
The leadership of the party remains in the legitimate hands of the legitimate leaders, led by our able party leader, Senator Moses Masika Wetangula. The Lion Party is stable and will redeem itself to play the rightful role in the body of politics of our country.
Meanwhile, after their endorsement in Kajiado last week, Oparanya and Wamalwa have received another boost after the Bukusu Council of Elders and church leaders in the region. Governor Oparanya defending the meeting held in Francis Atwoli's home, a meeting he has said is the starting point in the Luhya unity.
We must be in government, the current government, through the handshake, so that in these 2 years we can actually enjoy the fruits of this particular government.
And if the numbers is anything to go by, the region is likely to have more than 3 million registered voters if majority of the new voters will turn up to register as voters.
Hii sio siasa. Tukitoka hapa wazee wa Sabod ni wametualika Trans Nzoia kupitia Senator Mbito. Na hizi ni juhudi tunataka tuunganishe jamii zetu zinazokaa kwa kaunti za mipakani wakae kwa amani.
The more 30 leaders who met in Kajiado vowed to make the region be part of the next government and be involved in the current government.
Chama ya mtu yoyote, chochote, sisi hali yetu ni kukua uchumi.
Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula and ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi have been accused of skipping the ongoing Luhya unity quest. Joash Onsare reporting for TV 47.
Right, African heads of state and governments have come together and agreed to forge a common front in asking bilateral and multilateral partners to write off debts that African countries owe them. The leaders further called for collaboration from international partners and the private sector in rolling out measures to mitigate the adverse effects of COVID-19.
As COVID-19 continues to ravage the economies of different countries in Africa, continent leaders have come together to find a common solution to the pandemic. President Uhuru Kenyatta, who spoke in the teleconference conveyed by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, said Africa should step up its coronavirus testing capacity. President Kenyatta also underscored the need of African countries to support each other.
We didn't at that time realize just how important our strength would be in working together. Indeed, it is a challenging time for all of us, but I believe that together we will overcome.
The leader said foreign debt is a common challenge for African countries and agreed to forge a common front in asking bilateral and multilateral partners to waive loans that African countries owe.
About the debt in our respective regions of the APC, many of our economies are heavily laden with debt. And the messages have come forward very, very clearly and in an articulate way that debt, there should be standstill for debt, but there should also be a great consideration for debt forgiveness.
Industries. It is imperative, therefore, that we seize this opportunity to call upon our development partners to collaborate with us to respond effectively to the economic challenges posed by COVID-19.
The WHO Director General Dr. Tedros assured the heads of state and government of WHO's continued support for Africa in fight against the coronavirus pandemic.
Right now, WHO and OSCP need to continue to expand the work we're doing together, such as our efforts to strengthen health systems in more than 80 ACP and Asian countries.
President Macky Sall of Senegal, Felix Tshisekedi of DR Congo, Paul Kagame of Rwanda, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi of Egypt, and Ibrahim Keita of Mali participated. Zablon Masharia, TV47, Nairobi.
Let's now take a flight to Somalia, where combined efforts of the deadly novel coronavirus, devastating floods and desert locusts continue to hit that country, causing fear of the country's return to its olden days of political and security instability. The citizens are now calling upon the international community's intervention in order to avert a major humanitarian crisis.
Citizens of Somalia have little to celebrate as the country continues to face major disasters in the wake of the novel coronavirus. Raging floods and devastating desert locusts are ravaging throughout the entire country, leaving the citizens helpless. Development Action Network Program Manager Abdikarim Hussein says many of the residents have been left homeless and without a source of income as their homes and businesses have been submerged by the floods.
The floods submerged people's markets and businesses, thereby curtailing business activities and leaving many people without any source of income. Commodity prices have skyrocketed, harvests destroyed, and the little food coming to the market is too expensive.
Hawa Gedi, a displaced resident, tells the story of how she's been left homeless with no basic needs.
I was displaced from Bulakuda by floods and settled here at Il Jale. We are grateful to humanitarian agencies for providing us with food, water, and other basic needs. We need more support. We need food. We have nothing to eat.
Justin Brady, an officer with the Head Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, says the looming disasters are a threat to the food security of the nation.
We have a situation there where the two problems of COVID and flooding are converging and reinforcing the impact on the population. And then with the locusts, what we expect is to see a portion of the crops this year lost to the locust infestation, which will compound the food security and nutrition situation for many Somalis.
Having made exemplary strides towards gaining political and security stability, Somalia is now on the verge of losing it all with the numerous tragedies facing it at the moment. For TV47, I'm Zainab Mohammed.
Very well. Let's now recap one of our top stories that we highlighted earlier on. Now, we understand that the government is planning to roll out home community-based healthcare protocols that will pave way for home quarantines in a bid to actually decongest current isolation centers in the country. Let's now bring in Joachim, who's actually with AMREF, to just try to make sense of this very critical plan by the government. Joachim, who's joining us by way of Skype, thank you so much for joining us. The fact that there are people who are asymptomatic is no doubt today. But of course, we are all asking ourselves, how is this going to affect the fight against the spread of COVID-19 when we know that there are people who may have the virus but will not show the signs and symptoms of this virus?
Thank you. Already there are a lot of people who have the virus in the community and who have not even undergone the tests, and we are living with them. There are, 80% of people with COVID are asymptomatic, or they have very mild symptoms, which nobody would worry about. It's only about 15% who show symptoms which may cause them to go to hospital, and they would normally require outpatient care rather than being admitted. And it is only 5% who get severe disease who require to be in a ward, and some of them require even to be in an ICU. And so the spectrum of disease in COVID is such that the majority really don't need to be in a hospital. And even as we talk now, you remember when they did mass testing recently, they were discovering people in the community who were not sick at all, but had been positive.
Right.
So those people didn't need really to be restricted in a hospital.
Right. Joachim, before we even talk about the need to either have them in hospital or not, just the fact that someone might be having COVID-19 and shows no signs at all, how worrisome is this? Is this something for us to be worried about, or is this something that we can manage? We have people who probably even got sick without knowing and even got healed without knowing. Is this what we're staring at?
So this is the reason, this is the reason why people are advised to keep social distance. This is also the reason they are advised to wear masks. If you wear a mask and you're positive, you are unlikely to pass the virus to someone next to you. And if you keep social distance, again, you're unlikely to pass the virus. If you wash your hands, you're unlikely to contaminate things you touch around. And so the control measures that are more important than hospital admission are just those ones which we already are doing. So keep social distance, wash your hands, wear your mask, and everyone near you will be safe.
Right. Much as we talk about safety here, there is this plan by the government to actually come up with the protocols to have people, self-quarantine at home without being at the hospitals in order to decongest these health facilities. But in our nature, we've had CS Mutahi Kagwe bashing Kenyans heavily as far as our discipline is concerned. How practical will it be for people to actually self-quarantine at home when they are actually already sick?
So I think the CS is not asking for something different from what has been said from the beginning. From the beginning, we've been advised to keep social distance, to stay home as much as possible unless you have reason to leave your home. We've been advised to put on masks and to wash our hands. Now, the assumption is that any of us can be positive. That's why we are taking those measures. But now we are going a step further to say, even those who have now undergone the test and are actually positive, they can stay at home as long as we maintain those control measures, because there is no reason for someone who has no symptoms to be restricted in a hospital. And most of these people who get infected are really asymptomatic. They have no reason to be in a hospital. So I think the CS Kagwe is just saying, in other words, what has been said again and again, but now putting it in the perspective of more testing which is happening.
See, before I let you go, there is this feeling that probably our health facilities are already starting to get strained. This is a picture that probably is being painted somewhere. And when we talk about people self-isolating from their homes, let's think about those who have one room, a bed sitter, or probably they live in a house that has only a common area where they share with a very big family that is not that affluent to be able to live in those suburbs where rooms are self-contained and all that. How will such people survive such a directive?
Yeah, so there are many things here. So you consider that person with one room, being at home, maybe with the family. Most likely by the time they were getting COVID, most of the family members are also infected. And given that they are not having symptoms, what we are saying is they can maintain a bit of hygiene as much as possible, maintain 1-2 meter distance in the house, wear masks, instead of them being in a hospital, disrupting their lives totally, and being in a hospital, which also, a hospital also, they're living with other people who are infected. So there is really no difference in terms of if they don't need additional care. Being in a hospital and being at home is the same. By the time you are diagnosed to have COVID, most of your family members have come in contact with you. They must be either positive or just about to develop, the infection.
Yeah.
So there is really no difference whether now you are taken away or whether you are left there with them.
Yeah.
But hopefully 1 or 2 are not infected. You can still try to make those control measures work. Put on your mask even in the house if you are confirmed infected.
Yeah.
And if it is one room, in that one room, you can still maintain 1 meter apart.
Right. Very trying moments indeed. Of course, Joachim, thank you so much for making time to speak to us. That is Joachim Osur, is the technical director at AMREF Africa. Thank you so much, Joachim, for talking to us on Africa 411. At the moment, I want us to just take a very quick break right about now. But before we go there, let me just quickly take a look at some of your feedback that we are receiving so far. We have Nancy Wangeshi, who's actually is seemingly shocked. I think this is from the numbers of COVID-19 reported today. Who says, "Oh Lord, remember our Kenyans." Yule on Facebook says, "The money the government will be given, but we as the common wananchi will pay the debt." I think this is also in regards to one of the stories that we are doing right there. Of course, we want you to keep those comments coming. If you're tweeting, remember to add the hashtag Africa411. We'll still have more on the other side of the break, including our conversation on women and political leadership. And the question we're asking tonight is, why do we have few women in political positions, despite the fact that women are the largest majority of those who actually mobilize in political rallies and campaigns? Stay with us. We're back in a moment.
Mchungaji mwema, every Sunday, TV47 brings church straight to your home. Catch the Holy Mass from the Holy Family Basilica from 9:30 a.m. right here on TV47.
You are the mighty God, the great I am. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
This and every Sunday, TV47 brings church straight to your home. Come, worship straight from your home as we bring you the Sunday church service at the All Saints Cathedral from 11 a.m.
Right, thank you so much for still being with us right here on Africa 4-1. We're glad that you could join us. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. Now, moving on, at least 78 students out of those that scored a B+ and above in last year's Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education examinations have opted to join technical and vocational training centers instead of universities. Our senior reporter on matters education, Andrin Kilemi, reports on this emerging trend and what it portends for the future of universities.
It has now emerged that some of the courses offered in universities here in the country are unattractive to students. This following the small numbers of applicants enrolling in universities for those courses. In the recently released report by the Ministry of Education, Bachelor of Science in Entrepreneurship, Bachelor of Science in Energy Technology, Bachelor of Science in Automotive Technology, Bachelor of Technology in Building Construction, and Bachelor of Technology in Renewable Energy top the list of degree programs that failed to attract applications from the 2019 KCSE candidates.
It is extremely important that when you go to university, you get skills that will enable you to employ yourself and employ others. You should not get skills which will make you buy a suit and a tie and start working, looking for a job for 30 years.
To establish why the degree programs register fewer while others register zero applicants, we spoke to education expert Jonathan Wisaya.
Tunapopata mwanafunzi ameamua kutojiunga na chuo kikuu kuchukua kozi ambayo ingemchukua miaka 5 hadi 7, anaamua kwenda kuichukua kozi hiyo hiyo kwenye chuo anuwai ambacho kitamwezesha kumaliza na kuhitimu baada ya muda ya miaka 3, basi inakuwa kuna msukumo mwingine ambao hautakuwa bayana kwa umma, lakini ni bayana kwake pengine na familia yake.
According to education experts, many candidates prefer self-employment and blue-collar jobs which earn them money easily as compared to white-collar jobs where they have to work for a whole month to earn a salary.
Tumekuwa tunazungumzia masomo na kazi moja kwa moja, na mambo hayo hayaambatani hivyo. Kwani mtu haendi kupata elimu ili apate kazi. Mtu hukwenda shule kupata elimu ili aweze kujikimu maisha, na kujikimu sio kwenye pato linalotokana na mshahara. Kujikimu kunatokana na uhusiano atakaokuwa nao kwenye jamii yake, wale anaoishi nao, na pia vile atakavyoweza kutumia rasilimali ambazo anapata kwenye nafasi yake.
Speaking during the launch of the placement process report, Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha ordered an audit of the courses that attracted less applicants.
Significant number of students with C+ this year have opted to join the TVET courses, and they should therefore be encouraged, because from where we sit as government, money is money, whether you earn it wearing a tie like myself, or whether you earn it bending to repair a broken toilet. When you take that money home to your wife, mother, and child, it provides food on the table.
This comes even as 18% of last year's KCSE examination candidates secured spaces in government-sponsored schools, while over 500,000 others missed the opportunity. Andreen Clemi, reporting for TV47.
Right, thank you so much, Andreen, for that intensive report right there. Now, moving on, are you planning for your wedding? And the news a while ago on the halting of marriage sessions at the Attorney General's office broke your heart? Well, here's some good news for you. The Department of Marriages and Registration in the Office of the Attorney General has laid down new measures that will be used in conducting marriages after the exercise was stopped to curb the spread of COVID-19. As Eli Logova reports, people willing to have their marriages conducted by the Office of the Attorney General will now have to register online and could have their marriage conducted virtually.
It is a reprieve for people wishing to have their marriages conducted by the Registrar of Marriages at the Attorney General's office after new guidelines were drawn to allow for online registration of couples. This comes after the fiscal exercise at Sharia House was halted by the coronavirus pandemic.
eCitizen have been kind enough to set us up so that all applications for marriages are now going to be online. We are not going to have manual registration because with COVID, we cannot afford to have high traffic here. And during the low season, we serve around 100 people per day. During the high season, we go up to 400 people per day. So that's not possible. And for us to be able to provide this service efficiently, we want to cut down the traffic flow. So we are going to get people to register online.
However, the online registration will only be conducted in Nairobi as a pilot before being rolled to other parts of the country.
Kwa hivyo hao tutawatumia messages kwa kutumia runinga ili waweze kufanya application upya. Lakini tunataka kusitiza kuwa hao hawatalipa tena kwa sababu walikuwa wamelipa na sio makosa yao, kwa hivyo hawatalipa tena. Lakini ili tuhakikishe ndoa yao haitakuwa sio valid, tunataka kufuata sheria, kwa hivyo wao wata-apply na tutaenda process ya 90 days.
Couples who had done registration before the COVID-19 pandemic struck will be required to reapply, and only 4 people will be allowed to attend the vows-taking exercise at the AG's office.
So the big problem is here in Nairobi, where I said we could have as many as 30, 40 marriages in one day. So we want to pilot and make sure that the system works in Nairobi, where there is high traffic, and then we will extend the services to the regions. The way we have set it up now, we are only going to have 4 people allowed in when a marriage is being conducted.
The new guidelines have been put in place in order to reduce congestion at the Attorney General's office that could risk the health of the members of public and that of the staff serving them. Eli Logova, TV47, Nairobi.
Thank you so much, Eli Logova, for that report. Now, we understand that we will be having a very interesting conversation right here on Africa 4-1. And of course, tonight our focus is on women and political leadership. We definitely have had scenarios where most people have said that women have large numbers. They have the numbers. And of course, politics, as far as many are concerned, is usually a game of numbers. But the concerning affair or issue here is that very few women have been able to take up or been elected in position of leadership. As we speak today, we have one African country that has a female president, that is Ethiopia. And of course, we understand that Rwanda has the highest number of women parliamentarians worldwide, where women have won 61.3% of seats in the lower house. And of course, tonight our question is on why this particular scenario. And I have Natalie Rodriguez, who's actually joining us all the way from Jamaica. She is actually running for office. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Right. I also know that we have Nerea, who's actually was participating in the Miss President contest here in Kenya. Nerea, also thank you so much for being a part of this conversation tonight.
Glad to be in. Thank you.
Real quick, before we even delve deeper in this particular conversation, I also know Maureen is here with us, and she's with the Organization of Women Leadership. And of course, I want just to understand, let me start with you, Maureen, before I go to Nerea and Natalie. What is going on? Only 24.5% in 2013, these are women or their accountability as far as those who are in politics in parliament at the parliamentary level. What is the problem? Why is it that we're not seeing more women in political leadership despite their numbers in mobilizing for votes during elections?
All right, thank you very much first and foremost. TV47 Kenya, like the presenter have mentioned, my name is Maureen Omeibe, Dean of Coordinators African Women in Leadership Organization. That's a very important question, and I'm very glad that we're having this conversation today because the story has been an ugly one and it is continuing. I mean, it is getting worse and worse year in, year out across the African nations. And it's important we continue to bring these conversations to the front burner for the world to listen to us and know that it is a problem.
Right.
Yes, back to your question, you asked what is happening. What is happening about women's political representation in Africa is not a new phenomenon. It's something that has been on, it's something that some of us grew up to meet. And one of the major challenges that we have had in Africa is that the African culture do not allow the woman to grow ambition. The woman is not encouraged to have political ambition. It starts from the cradle. And if as a child, a girl child is growing up, is not being encouraged to be able to grow and define her position, it becomes very, very difficult. So it's first and foremost psychological.
Right.
The environment, the cultural environment of the African nation has always mitigated a woman's capacity to aspire and not ambition for political positions.
Right. I know we'll be digging deeper into this. I know we'll be digging deeper into this, but Natalie, we are in the 21st century. We've had this for a long time, that the culture does not allow the woman to actually, stand up for political leadership or just leadership for that particular matter. Tell me something different that we haven't had. I'm not trying to downplay that fact, but I want us to understand whether we are, hiding behind this issue of culture and why we have not been able to dismantle it in the 21st century. Natalie.
Let me tell you, while I agree with Maureen, I think it's a little bit more. I think as women, we're afraid. We're afraid of taking, because it's a huge step. It is seen as a very rough thing to do. And many of us as Black women don't want to be seen as rough or abrasive. So I think that's a part of it. We're also still seen as women as caregivers primarily. Politics is time consuming. It takes hours. This is not my first time going into politics, Eugene, and I had to take a step back to raise my children. That is the reality of life. That's how I met you in Rwanda. Rwanda because I was on this hiatus from my political career to grow my children and to follow my husband to build his career. So the reality is it is time consuming for us women. If you do it, you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot of yourself and your identity as a woman, as is often recognized in the Caribbean and African culture. You won't be able to do all the school events. So if you're still in those ages when you want to have children and raise them, it's very difficult for you to go into politics. So while I understand the issue of culture, there is also, and it's expensive. Politics is not cheap. So you have to be willing to put forward that financial investment. So it's emotional, it's mental, it's physical, and it's financial. And there is also a fact that many of us don't like to talk about. Sometimes as women, we don't support each other enough. So the woman will be the one in the constituencies and they are happy to do all the organizing and stuff. But there are instances when those same women prefer to support a male candidate than a female candidate. Thank heavens I'm not experiencing that right now in my campaign, but it is a reality of part of the reason women don't go up there, because they just don't feel they'll get the support that they need to from their fellow women.
Right. So you mentioned several things which are very interesting. Before I want to bring in Maureen on this now. You say that one, politics is very expensive. Two, women have just been perceived as caregivers. You say, you know what, you seem to be designed to just want to take care of your family, and you would actually give up your political ambitions and career to just take care of the family. But what is interesting is what you just said lastly right there, that most women do not stand up for fellow women during voting and during the time of making these decisions to support them to take up these particular leadership roles. Maureen, even if we park all these things aside and ask ourselves, what do people want? Do they want a leader because that leader is a woman, or it doesn't really matter? All we need is just a leader. I mean, should we be thinking about it from a gender microscope, or it doesn't really matter as long as someone has leadership skills, which probably this is what people have been looking at to vote for the men we see in these particular leadership positions? Is this how we look at it?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, myself being a development enthusiast, I would like to be looking at these things, not just from a gender lens, but from a lens of a woman who has national development as one of my key interests in life. When you look at it properly, it is not just because they are women that we are asking that they should be given a position. But if you look at history, in the political realm, the history spells out that larger percentage of men have always taken up the positions. They have been in charge for a very long time. So the question we should be asking is, beyond the agitation that women should be given equal rights, equal opportunities, equal access to all these positions, the authority, the power, the means, what question we should ask is, how far have the men gone? If at this point, after several decades, for instance, in my own country, we got our independence 50-something years ago, and since then, men have been in charge. The question should be, how far have they gone? Have they fared well? In terms of national development, how far have they fared? Have they contributed effectively to the development of nations across Africa? If the question is no, then in the process of researching to know the reason why we have had developmental failures, I do not want to generalize, but I would like to tell you that most African nations are having developmental failures, and it is attributed to the poor leadership that we are having in Africa. So if men have been in charge, I would like to say, let me finish. If men have been in charge, then the question should be, what is the problem? What is giving rise to the inefficiency and the poor productivity level of our leaders? So it is just important for us to know that from research, one of those reasons is that half of the population of each African country is missing, apart from Rwanda, is missing in leadership activities, is missing in leadership functions, is missing in decision making. And what that means is that half of that population is not being utilized. Their capacity is being left behind in the development process of our countries across Africa. And it is not good. It's wrong. So it's not about that we are asking for women to be given opportunity because we are women. As a matter of fact, in politics, nobody gives anybody opportunity. Nobody steps up for this. People have to fight in the political process. People have to fight in the political space to be able to get. But what I'm saying is this: if all these years men have been in charge and the report is not so good, why can't we, integrate this other population that has been left behind and see what happens?
Right.
That's my.
But we must also take responsibility.
Then let me also finish.
Yes.
If we look at Rwanda that has 61.25 in their representation,
yes,
I would like us to know where they are coming from, and I would like us to also look at the progression, the progress that they have achieved within this short period of time,
right,
because women are well represented.
Right.
So I think we should be talking about tapping into the capabilities of human beings. When we are talking about leadership, when we are talking about development, when we are talking about transformation in any society, human capacity cannot be left by the side.
Right.
And what the African women have achieved so far, the level that they have attained, is showing that they have come of age. They have a lot to offer.
Right.
They have a lot to bring to the table. So we are losing out when we are neglecting them and when we are neglecting their inclusion in the political process.
Right. Maureen and Natalie, I want you to pause a bit. I want us to bring in Nerea, who's been listening keenly on this particular conversation since the time we started. Nerea, you actually participated in a contest that actually was sort of aimed at mirroring or trying to show us an image of a president who's a female, and you participated in this particular contest, a Miss President here in Kenya. You've listened to Maureen and Natalie argue out their points. We've heard that politics is very expensive. We've also heard that women in their nature are, caregivers. They feel like they can easily sacrifice their political careers in order to take care of their families. But then most importantly, there's been this point by Natalie that most women do not support fellow women when it comes to, these elective positions. Talk to me about what you feel from where you sit, because Maureen also says that we have seen a lot of failures in Africa today because those in leadership are men. If we had women presidents, like we have men right now in African leadership, would the picture be different, in your opinion?
Thank you, Eugene. And I have, been listening and trying to weigh, the conversations that we have as women and looking at, to what extent should we, number one, competitively get into political leadership, and number two, to what extent should we then rely on affirmative action to get more women into leadership? Because in my experience, if a woman competes against men, the victory is usually hard-earned, but well-earned. And so in terms of representation, they see a lot of substantive representation from that woman. And ideally, I do not need to campaign for women to be president in a country simply because we have never seen, the brilliance that comes out of that leadership. I think, that is sort of taking a simplistic, opinion and point of view. I think what we need to look at is, even if a woman were to be elected president, what governance systems exist in a particular country that will make that woman succeed as a president? And to what extent can that woman be able to influence and shape government policy?
Right, Nerea, we seem to be having some issues with your signal, but of course, let me bring in Natalie here. But Natalie, when we look at the photo ops of, leaders of the African Union, when they meet and they pose for those particular photos, you'd have to zoom in to actually see a woman in that particular picture. How does this make you feel as a woman?
Our
political systems are still old boys clubs
Yeah.
to a large extent. And as I say, there's responsibility on everybody's side.
Mhm.
There's responsibilities. The responsibility is on the governance structures to allow for more women to want to and to be able to participate. And at the same time, us women need to want to take the gamble and be strong enough and to have the family and friendship supports in order to take the big step. Now, I am not one who is for a governance system, though, which dictates how many women should be there, because that in itself brings its own challenges, because just to have a woman in the position for the sake of having a woman is not enough. Because we have seen examples in other countries where in order to meet the quota of women, I mean, there are countries where it works. So let's say, for example, Rwanda, it works, but we all know Rwanda is the exception to most rules. But you have other countries where there's a quota system, and those women go to parliament and still do not do anything specific for women or children. They do what the men who put them in that place require of them to do. And so it has to be a whole systemic change. It can't be to fill a position and because you want to have women. It has to be women who actually want to do this and have the support to do it. Now, recently in Jamaica, we have had the death of a woman, a minister of government, Shiny Robinson. She was our minister of labor and security in Jamaica, social security in Jamaica. And she just died a few days ago. And it caused me to reflect, because this is one of the sweetest souls you'll ever meet. In any category, in any profession, but as a woman in politics. And I think what happened is why she's so admired is because she did it without losing her womanhood. She was still, a lot of women, a lot of us who go into politics, we become a little rougher. We become a little more aggressive than would normally be. And we feel that we have to become more like the men in order to survive. But Minister Robinson did it and maintained who she was as a lady, and was so highly successful. So there are a lot of factors, but I think more than anything else, we just need that support in order to do it. And men need to step up and help in the household so that we have the free time to go and do this.
Right, perfect. Maureen, before we take a break and fix Nerea's signal, I want to read your thoughts on Nigeria, for example. I know it's one of the world's most populous countries, and of course we know that the numbers of women there are quite, substantive enough to be able to put a woman into the political position of any sort. We know during the elections, Madame Ezekwesili did have she didn't carry on to the end, or even if she would have, probably she was not going to win. Talk to me about the aspect of women for women, which Natalie mentioned earlier on, that is missing in the equation of ensuring that women ascend to power or positions of leadership. What is wrong with a majority of women who do not support fellow women? What really causes this?
Thank you very much, Susie. You see, just like my co-panelist just said, that everybody has some level of responsibility in carving for a change in the political system of African nations.
Right. Maureen, we seem to have a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's better now. Good.
Okay. All right. I said one of the major reasons why the African Women in Leadership Organization was formed was to begin to address these problems from the roots, because it is something that gave rise to something. Why so many women out there believe that women don't support each other? I would like to toe a different line at this point in time because of the experience I've garnered over the years as a member of the African Women in Leadership Organization. Why sometimes women lose hope in supporting other women is because the structure that the other woman is utilizing to source for his political power or authority. Even without a lay person that doesn't know anything about politics, we know that even if that woman gets to the poll, that is going to fail. So, for instance, when we talk about the political process, when we take a look when we take a look at our political legislation, that's our political laws, that's the electoral process laws, you will see that despite the fact that they gave women some windows of opportunity by letting them, allowing them to procure political party, forms without payment. Because some parties in my country, for instance, you pay as much as 20 million to get a political form. That is a form that will enable you to run for any office.
Yeah.
Now, women are giving the widow, okay, do not pay this money, procure these forms free. But that did not remove the fact that the entire process is monetized. So if a woman came and picked up the form free of charge, and go into campaigns, and here, in fact, we shouldn't. How many women has what it takes to go walk into banks, institutions, and take money for running office? You can't do it, but the man has the free hand to do that. That is number one. Then secondly, men lobby a lot, and you see a lot of things happening when a man comes out that he wants to run. Who does that for the woman? Nobody. So the point is that if who wants to run for a political office, and you find out that if the counterpart is running about 12 different rallies in the state, the woman is just doing one because he's incapacitated. So you see other parties going into television, spending millions of naira to do campaigns, to talk to and go to everywhere that they need to go and speak to every person that they need to speak to. You find out the woman is highly limited because he does not have the economic power. So even, but it is not, I would not say, and also argue that women don't support women, but no, there is an underlying factor. It is the fact that even before the woman goes to the poll, the woman has already failed. And like I said before, when it is politics, it has to do with a psychology. There's a type of psychology that is innate that people need to deal with to win political posts.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, when you see a woman going to poll and you look behind her and you're just seeing few number of persons, I mean, it does not encourage anybody, both men and women.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. I want us to take a quick break, take a breather, allow what we've talked about to sink in. But when we come back, we move this conversation forward. Of course, we'll be asking ourselves whether people should be voting for manifestos or based on gender. And of course, we'll be trying to dig a bit deeper on that and look at the issue of the nature of politics across Africa. We've seen a lot of violence in parts of Africa when it comes to elections. They've always been seen as a murky affair, and we'll be talking a bit about how challenging that is for both genders when it comes to vying for political positions. Stay with us. That is Nerea, Maureen, and Natalie in Jamaica. Thank you so much for still being with us. I want you to keep tweeting us. All you need to do is add the hashtag Africa411. Let us know your thoughts on why we are seeing very few women in political leadership, despite the large numbers of women when it comes to voting and mobilizing for votes. I know on Facebook we have Yule who says there is nothing hindering women to run for the seats. The assumption being made is that politics is for men, hence women find it awkward, making them not to stand against men. I want to hear from our panelists on their thoughts on this one and much more when we come back. Stay with us.
As usual, I'm your host, Hamadi Murila.
Mchungaji mwema.
Every Sunday, TV47 brings church straight to your home. Catch the Holy Mass from the Holy Family Basilica from 9:30 a.m. right here on TV47.
You are the mighty God, the great I am. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
This and every Sunday, TV47 brings church straight to your home. Come, worship straight from your home as we bring you the Sunday church service at the All Saints Cathedral from 11 a.m.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
As usual, I'm your host, Hamadi Murila.
It's our responsibility to fully participate in ending this coronavirus pandemic.
You are the mighty God, the great I am. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
This and every Sunday, TV47 brings church straight to your home. Come, worship straight from your home as we bring you the Sunday church service at the All Saints Cathedral from 11 a.m.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Thank you so much for still being with us right here on Africa 411. My name, as always, is Eugene Adangwe. Now, we have been talking about Africa and, of course, women in leadership in Africa. That conversation is just going to continue shortly. I can see your feedback is coming through on some of the stories that we have aired so far. One is, to my assumption, I think the isolation wards contain a few number of beds. So how are they managing to take care of 2,000 plus coronavirus cases? This, I think, is with regards to the plans by the Ministry of Health to actually try out isolation at home for COVID-19 patients who are asymptomatic. Let's take this story and then we'll continue with our conversation with our panel on women in leadership in Africa. Now, following the entry of coronavirus into the African continent, governments across the continent continue to take far-reaching measures to protect their citizens from the pangs of this virus. From lockdowns to night curfews and cessation of movements, all in an effort to containing the spread of the virus. Now, 3 months later, the center seemingly can no longer hold. It is now becoming a tall order for some African countries to continue with these restrictions as economies face a major setback. Our reporter Mwangi Maina tells us more on how African countries are easing these restrictions.
It is 3 months and 1 week now since the first coronavirus case was reported in sub-Saharan Africa in Nigeria. 36 days after this case, Africa had recorded 1,000 cases in different countries. 2 months later, the continent had crossed the 100,000 cases mark. Today, the continent has recorded more than 160,000 cases with more than 4,000 deaths and the virus making a soft landing in all the 54 African countries. Some countries went on total lockdown, while others initiated partial lockdowns in hotspot areas, especially in major towns and cities, before a surge in numbers. Others implemented night curfew orders and cessation of movements in the high-risk areas. Rwanda was the first country in the continent to go on lockdown, followed by South Africa, which is the most hit country. Other countries that followed suit include Ghana, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Uganda, Tunisia, Madagascar, Morocco, Senegal, Algeria, Kenya, among others. With the countries facing social challenges and hard economic times, citizens have been calling out on their governments to ease the confinement measures. Governments have to juggle between lifting these measures and protecting the lives of their citizens as well as protecting livelihoods. In South Africa, some businesses have been allowed to reopen, with restaurants delivering takeaway food. People have also been allowed to exercise between 6 and 9 a.m., with plans to reopen schools and places of worship on the table. After reopening their border with Zimbabwe, Zimbabweans living in South Africa can now send food to their kins in their country. Small trucks are used to deliver food and other goods across the border. As they transact, they have to follow the laid-out measures to combat the spread of COVID-19. In Senegal, the government lifted restrictions after protests rocked the holy city of Touba and beyond. Protesters saying the period was long and difficult, with the Senegalese government having closed borders and banned transport within the country. The government was forced to relax the dusk to dawn curfew and the transport restriction in the country. In Ivory Coast, schools were reopened after the government eased the restrictions. In the city of Abidjan, which is the epicenter of the virus, operations have resumed to normal. The Ivory Coast government said it had a compelling reason to reopen the schools and allow students finish their studies. Fear of reinfections in the country remains high. The country is the first in West Africa to allow pupils to go back to school. All pupils are required to put on face masks, sanitize and maintain a distance of at least 1 meter from each other. Closer home in Uganda, President Museveni has started to ease the strict measures imposed in the country. President Museveni termed the infections tamed and said it was now better equipped to trace and detect new infections faster than before. Public transport and use of most private vehicles remain prohibited, meaning Ugandans will either use bicycles or walk on foot to work, as witnessed in the capital, Kampala. Businesses including hardware shops, restaurants, wholesale stores and others will now be allowed to reopen. Uganda, a country of 42 million people, reported 97 confirmed cases and no deaths in 45 days of restrictions. Back home, Kenyans are waiting anxiously for the government to provide the next set of measures as the curfew imposed in March comes to an end. Whether or not the cessation of movement into and out of the Nairobi metropolitan area and 5 other counties will be lifted or not is now a matter of wait and see. Mwangi Maina, TV47, Nairobi.
Interesting. Right there. Now let's dig deeper back into our conversation. And tonight we've been talking about women and political leadership in Africa. And let me bring back Nerea, who's actually been following from a distance. Nerea, before we actually took the break, we were looking at some of the hindrances we've had about why, with Maureen giving us perspective as to how women end up not supporting fellow women. We heard from Natalie, who's in Jamaica. She's also vying for a political position. She mentioned an array of issues that are putting women on their side as far as political leadership is concerned. Back in Kenya, Nerea, you and I know that we have had political candidates for the top job who were women. We have had Charity Ngilu, who's now the governor of Kitui, and of course we've also had Martha Karua, who has her own political party, and both of them never won the presidency. You as a woman, why is it that you think they never actually made it to become president of Kenya at the points where they vied for this particular big job?
Very, very interesting, Eugene. I'll give you my very personal and objective opinion.
Sure.
Number one, on Martha Karua, I have always believed that she's a good politician, she's a strong politician, but she also tried to conform to the notion and perception of what is ideal in a politician. So she tried to be much, she tried to be aggressive, she tried to be forward, so that she could match the energy of the male politicians. And that in itself is what causes failure in women, because essentially women are not wired with that level of aggression that men come with into politics. And so she was not very comfortable in being a woman, you know, having that demeanor of a woman and still being able to sell her agenda. And so for me, that's quite objective. And number two, when I looked at Charity Ngilu, at that point in time, the vehicle that Governor Charity Ngilu used at that point did not resonate with Kenyans. And at that time, I don't believe Kenyans already had enough of this conversation about what is it that they see in that woman who is a leader, and not just talking about, oh, elect me because I'm a woman. I think the messaging around that time was not accurate. And so I bring you back to what we did and achieved on this president. Critical, we needed Kenyans to see that you can have women, they can be leaders and bring a feminine touch. The feminine touch is important for women. That is one thing that we keep forgetting. That is one thing that women leaders globally are doing in their response to COVID. And so we are looking at women at different, but they are capable, and they're leaders who are able to handle crisis. They are leaders who are able to show the male counterpart that they can succeed where the men are failed in terms of crisis management. Right. And so even looking at Miss President, I can tell you for one thing, competing women is not as easy as it's made out to be. Because people think that when you're competing women, then we are all very nice and we are all very kind and we are friends. We are much better performers. So women are able to have better political strategy. And so the reason why Kenya, I think the whole process of trying to win against women. And I can tell you that I came out a very different woman. I came out a woman that will vote for a woman in the next election, because I have seen that women, despite the fact that they have all these odds, when a woman decides to go for a political seat, then that woman will go for it. I come from a county where we have 8 constituencies, and we have 3 women elected members, single constituency, seats. And I can tell you, it's the willpower to do it. And if you look at the voting population, what is it about men that makes them vote for women? I will tell you from my Kenyan experience. If the men see that you're a woman who will stay the course, if the men see that you're a woman who is able to withstand the pressure, if the men see that you're a woman who has your men or other men from the family behind, then you're getting elected. Men do not want to elect a woman who thinks that she can cry about undergoing the pressure of election.
Right.
Women have done it. So if there is no seat for you at the table, then you bring your seat as a woman.
You bring your seat as a woman, Nerea. There's something interesting you mentioned, Nerea, before we even go too far, and I want to bring in also Natalie on this. You mentioned that one of the women presidential candidates here in Kenya, who you say did not manage to actually clinch the presidency, was partly because of what you say she did not or she does not express the demeanor of a woman. I would like you to just clarify what that really means. What would be the demeanor of a woman that you'd like to see in a woman who's vying for political seat?
It simply means, Eugene, if I am a woman presidential, then what I should not do is to behave aggressively, adopt a macho attitude, because that people to see that I am strong enough. I should be a woman that is comfortable coming in with empathy. That is number one. I should be a woman that is even risk averse. Because the risks that are involved in making political decisions are many, but people will see that woman nurtures a family, and therefore a woman is nurturing a nation. You cannot compete on the same level. And that is mistakes that I have made. I thought that louder than the men. I thought that fighting physically like the men to get me elected. No, that's happening. Because other people are seeing you as a threat to the ego. And if you want to get elected by men, then the only thing you should not touch is the ego. So for me, it's clear cut. You go into a race acknowledging that, number one, you are not a man. Number two, you want to compete on an equal footing. And number three, your electorate, as you interact with them, will get to understand how you are able to sell your policies, how you are able to respond to attacks from the men.
Perfect.
Not necessarily the woman.
Natalie, when you sit there listening to that explanation, as a person who's vying yourself as a woman, are these things that Nerea mentions, are these things that you would conform to for you to be elected as you contest against men?
Yes, and the funny thing, in my seat, I'm contesting against another woman.
Okay.
And in Jamaica's parliament, we only have 12 of 63 females in the House. So we have 63 seats and only 12 are filled by women. Now, what she just said mirrors a lot of what I said earlier, that Shaini Robinson, the recently passed Minister of Government, she kept her womanhood throughout and she was highly successful. But I think what it is accepting who you are as an individual and not trying to change that for the political scenario.
What if she's aggressive? What if you're aggressive in your nature? What if you have this strong aura that moves with you, and that is your nature? Should you be judged and told, you know what, you are not reacting as a woman, and so you're pushing a certain level of aggressiveness as if you want to actually portray that you are a man?
I don't think anyone has to change who they are, because even though in my mind a part of the problem has been women trying to be more masculine in their approach, I think if you're naturally like that, people will pick it up. So I think the focus should more be on being naturally who you are, and that will come across the voters. Do not try to be something that is not in your nature, because people pick up after a while when you're being pretentious.
Right, but
I think society requires us women to shift who we are according to the tides or what we think people need or what is asked. But I think we need to just genuinely be ourselves.
Yeah, let's talk about the nature of our political parties. Of course, we understand that for you to vie, in many cases, you have to actually belong to a certain political party. And we have seen the nature of most African political parties. Majority of them are actually anchored on the principle of that particular party. I mean, the party leader. And so if you don't dance to the tunes of the party leader, then you are most likely not to actually get a ticket, or there's some strings that sometimes are usually pulled and other people get these particular tickets. Talk to me a bit about how challenging this is for a majority of women who want to vie for political positions, and probably they have different ideologies from the party leadership or the nature of those particular political parties. Maureen, I'm told you're back on. Just talk to us a bit about that, and then we'll engage the rest of the panelists. I think we've lost her again. Natalie, you want to jump in on that, and then we bring
Yes, I would love to. I would love to, absolutely. No, firstly, I am fortunate enough to have a party leader who is relatively young and who I've known from John was a boy, as we say here in Jamaica, from a long time ago. And so I don't have that difficulty in my situation, but I see it right across the board. But it's no different from any other entity. If you're a part of an organization, whether it is your PTA, whether it is your citizens association, or it is a multilateral company, there are times when you are going to have to toe the corporate line. It's not just for politicians. So it's the same way as a woman going to look at a job with, for example, Nike, and she doesn't believe in the philosophy of Nike, but she really wants the job. She's going to have to toe the Nike line. It's the same way as if you're working for a tobacco company, but you're not really for tobacco. Then you shouldn't go there. So I don't think it is something specific to politics. Whether or not you agree with your party line, then you should not go to that party if you don't believe in your leader of the party, and you don't, because reality of life is political parties in developing nations are leader-centric. If that is not for you at this point in time, then stay out of politics. And then you should go with a party that is in line with what you believe in. As I said, it's the same way if you're in the private sector. You cannot be a part of an entity that you don't believe in what they're doing. That is a recipe for trouble.
Right. Maureen, I'm told Maureen is back. Before we bring Nerea to share her thoughts on that particular same question. Maureen, we are talking about political parties and the difficulties that women go through to actually get the party ticket when it comes to vying for top jobs. Talk to me about how challenging or how easy it has been for women to actually, vie for office or seek to vie for office, and the challenges they face to pick a political party that they need to use for this particular cause.
Okay, thank you very much, Eugene. First and foremost, I would like to cap what my co-panelists have mentioned about what women usually try to do when they are vying for political positions. I have a little different perspectives when it comes to that. And that is because in the political terrain, in the political realm, especially in the African nations, it will be better. We are more of realists than idealists. Realist in the sense that you have to understand the political terrain and the demands of the political terrain to be able to succeed. So in the African Women in Leadership Organization, for instance, our emphasis is on women getting well prepared and having the right education about the obligations of navigating through the process. So the thing is this. First and foremost, I talked about dealing with the issues from the roots. When I was talking about that, I was referring not only on the monetization aspect of the political process, I'm also looking at the family-unfriendly policies of our electoral process.
Yes.
So when a woman begins to do things that ordinarily he wouldn't do if he's not in the political terrain, it doesn't mean that the woman is trying to be like the man. It doesn't mean that the woman is trying to position herself to be masculine. It just means that the woman is trying to adapt to the realities of the situation.
Right.
For instance, in my country, and I would always like to talk briefly about my country because I have been in the system for a very long time, conducting researches, working for women, vying for political positions, looking at problems that constitute failures for women seeking for political positions. And what I have come to find out is this: the process itself is unfeminine. Because for you to actually even yes, for you to be able to secure that form and navigate through the process from one step to the other, there are basic requirements. There are basic calls on the candidature of that woman. For instance, what are the times that electoral meetings, the party meetings are held? In Nigeria, my country, and a few other African countries that I had worked with, I see that they hold their meetings very late in the night. And ordinarily, no woman would like to step out of your house in the middle of the night to attend party meetings. And I can tell you, there are some of those meetings that when you don't attend, the decision will be taken and it will be drastic on your intention, on your political ambition, and sometimes even at the time they are going to remove you, they will remove you in those meetings. So what I'm saying is this: these things is a system, it's an ecosystem which I think needs to be sanitized before the African woman will find the freedom and the equity to participate on level field with the male counterpart. Now, back to what I wanted to say. Yes, it's difficult for the women. It's very difficult because of this thing I have pinpointed. And what we are saying is this: do not think that because you are a woman and you come to run for political office that the men will give you chance. No. So what we are telling the woman is you need to be prepared twice as much as the men. Haven't realized that this is the situation. Haven't realized that this is the terrain. You have to be prepared. You have to understand that is have the right education about the political sphere in your country, about the political culture in your country. Some many months back, like 2 or 3 months ago, a woman in my country, a woman political leader was born into ashes in her hometown. Because of politics. She was doing well. She had followers. She had people that she's leading. So, as I'm speaking in front of everyone here today, we have not seen the culprits, the people that committed this dastardly act, being paraded anywhere. There has not been cogent decision taken against these individuals. Yes, we hear that something is being done, but what exactly is being done? So what am I saying? If you are a woman, you are in that, you are in that terrain. If the men are employing security personnel, you to do so.
I think your point is clear, Maureen.
Applying for position, they put meeting in the middle of the night. You have to attend it at least until things changes. So you're just adapting and trying to be effective, and then result oriented in whatever thing you are pursuing at that point in time. So it's really it's very difficult for the African woman to vie for political office because everything there is very unfriendly to the woman.
Very valid points, Maureen. Thank you so much for those particular points. It is now 24 minutes after 10 p.m. I don't want to be part of those who are actually calling for meetings and panel discussions this very, very late. Like Maureen says, some political parties across Africa are actually having certain rules like these ones that hinder most women from participating in some of those meetings. And therefore, I want us to take this conversation home. And I want to hear from you, Natalie. Where do we go from here? What sort of commitments should we be looking at? We're talking about sanitizing our hands. How do we sanitize our African politics to be able to allow for women to easily sail in? And if this particular journey will not be easy, are women or the women folk ready to get their hands dirty?
Well, I don't even think we should look at it as getting our hands dirty at all. What it is that we have to develop the courage to make the sacrifice, to do what we need to do to be a part, to get our seat at the table. We need not be afraid. We may not win on our first go, but we have to be willing to try again. So we need our family and friends to support us and to stand strong with us. And we need people who donate to political systems, to donate to the campaigns of female candidates as much as they do to male candidates, right? And then we have to be accountable and transparent with that process. And then the men in our lives, our husbands, our partners, need to be willing to help with the childcare and the management of the household to give us the opportunity to be free to attend the meetings, whatever time they are, and to attend the PTAs. So it requires a lot of work from all people involved. And then if we find that we're not getting the support, we do what we have always done. We just get up like a phoenix and we just buck the system and we just fight and we carry the babies to parliament with us on the campaign trail as much as we need to and do what we have to do, because it is we can't sit and wait for it to happen for us.
We can't sit and wait.
We're going to have to go and take it.
Perfect.
Go and take it.
Perfect. Nerea, do you think that, of course, from the African cultural perspective, from what Natalie says, do you feel that African husbands are ready to actually take these children and take care of them as their wives go out on the campaign trail in this game that most people call a dirty game, that is politics? in your closing remarks.
Well, I can tell you, Eugene, my husband is gracious, and my husband has had my back ever since I went back to school when I had, 4 children. And so for over 10 years, he held everything down. And if my husband can do it, then for sure another woman's husband will join that bandwagon, because we need that kind of home support. But that being said, let me make my final remarks in giving a way forward. I think the best vehicle to get women elected are the political parties, because that is the only way a woman will gain enough solidarity in a movement to get to political office. And so I am a member of the Orange Democratic Movement Party in Kenya, and my party leader is on record as looking out for women leaders, and his record is quite exemplary. He has built more political careers for both men and women in this country than most other political party leaders. And I can tell you that even right now, I'm a beneficiary of a training program by the Africa Liberal Network, being supported by the Liberal Democrats in the UK, to build my capacity towards winning an election. So my political party is already engaging with me, and they are working with me and supporting me through the whole process, so that when we get to an election, that they are going to have a candidate who can win. I think also as women, we need to be able to tune ourselves to see, can we, mold it into winning candidates, because no party would like to lose an election. And that's probably the reason why you don't get many of them giving women the tickets that, they have in the party. So I think my opinion is, if you're a woman and you want to get into politics as a way forward, you need to jump in. And if you can't swim, you better figure out how to swim, because essentially politics is not easy. Politics requires you to be in there 100%. And politics requires a support system to be alongside you 100%. So there's no need for water, because the world needs 50% of its population at the decision making.
Perfect. Brilliant minds tonight on Africa 4-in-1. It was very deliberate for us to have an all-female panel, just to be able to get this from the horse's mouth. And you've been amazing, and I'm hoping that we'll still be able to talk more on leadership in Africa in the course of our lifetime here and the lifetime of Africa 4-in-1. Thank you very much for being a part of Africa 4-in-1 tonight. My panelists joining us from Nigeria, here in Kenya, and of course in Jamaica, Natalie, Maureen, and Nerea. Thank you so much for being a part of the show, and I wish you all the best. Stay safe, sanitize, and keep safe. All right, now let's just read some feedback here. I see James Wanzala, who joined us on Twitter via the hashtag Africa4on1, who says Africans, especially males, should start to believe in women to lead, because leadership is not about gender but ability to deliver services and promises that one made during presidential campaigns. What a man can do, a woman can do it, and even better. James, thank you so much for that particular feedback. I want to say thank you for all those who've been watching us from far and wide. We'll talk again about Africa next week, same time, same place, right here on Africa 4-in-1. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Goodbye for now.
We value your feedback, welcome any comments, queries or complaints regarding our programming content. You can get in touch with us on 0768095491 or send us a message on 22047. You can also send us a letter on Post Office Box 2358 0062.